Assalamu alaikum. I received an email from a man who enjoys intimacy regularly with his wife, several times per day, in fact. And his question is regarding ghusl. So I'm going to be reading out his email and then answering the question in his email. Before I get to that, I just want to let you know that I offer online courses to men, women, and parents, whether the men and women are single or married. Check out the courses I offer to help you with overcoming your sexual struggles. I'm also providing a 50% discount to any of my online courses. The code for that is in the description box below. So let me read out the email. Assalamu alaikum. Can you recommend a solution in a video for the following issue? My wife refuses to have sex multiple times, 5 to 6 per day, due to having to perform ghusl numerous times to pray salah. She says her hair is falling out due to having to wash it so much. Is there a way to work around this issue? I never refuse her when she wants it, but her refusals leave a bitter taste. Okay, so I just want to say a disclaimer first of all. I'm not an Islamic scholar, but based on my Islamic research, there are several things that necessitate a ghusl for the man and or woman. And then there are several situations when, in terms of intimacy, there are several situations where ghusl is not required for one or both of the spouses. And let me explain. So one of the requirements of ghusl, so one of the reasons that would need ghusl is if the man enters the wife. Okay, so if the man penetrates the wife, both of them need to perform ghusl, even if none of them reached climax, even if none of them ejaculated, even if none of them reached orgasm. So if some of the penis or all of the penis goes into the wife's vagina, then they both need to perform ghusl, even if none of them ejaculate. Now, if they are performing other types of sexual intimacy that don't include penetration into the vagina, such as if the wife uses her hands to stimulate her husband and only him, the man, ejaculates or reaches orgasm or climaxes, if only the man ejaculates and has an orgasm, but the wife doesn't, then the wife does not need to perform ghusl, but the man does. Vice versa applies. So if, for example, the wife was being stimulated by her husband and only she reached an orgasm or climaxed, or only she ejaculated, because it is possible for women to ejaculate too, if only she reached orgasm or only she reached or only she ejaculated, then she needs to perform ghusl. But if the husband didn't, then he doesn't need to perform ghusl. Now, if, for example, the wife is stimulating the husband and there is no penetration, but through her stimulating the husband, she also reaches orgasm too, then she is required to perform ghusl. Or they could both, so the man and the wife, there might not be any penetration. So the man doesn't enter the wife, but they are stimulating each other in other ways. No penetration, but they are both stimulating each other, and both of them reach orgasm or ejaculate, then both of them are required to perform ghusl. So basically, the spouse, man or woman, the spouse who reaches orgasm or ejaculates, that is the spouse that needs to perform ghusl. So if only one spouse reached orgasm through non-penetration, if only one spouse reached orgasm or climaxed or ejaculated, that is the spouse who needs to perform ghusl. But as I said, if there is penetration, regardless of whether there is ejaculation or not, if there is penetration, both spouses perform ghusl. So in terms of answering the question, what is the workaround? If your wife doesn't want to keep having ghusl several times a day, and I'm not really going to comment on the frequency based on this email, 5 to 6 times per day seems very frequent, but I'm not going to comment because it's you and your marriage. And if in general you and your wife are happy with that level of intimacy, happy to do it that many times, but the issue is the ghusl part, let me focus on that part. And so this is the workaround. If you as the husband want to have intimacy several times per day, then you can communicate with your wife for her to stimulate you so that you as a man ejaculate and reach orgasm. And so therefore you as a man would need to perform ghusl, but she can stimulate you with any other part of her body, not inside the vagina, and as long as she doesn't reach orgasm or she doesn't ejaculate, she doesn't need to perform ghusl. And that's the workaround to this. So you are still satisfied as the man. She stimulates you in a different way, not through her vagina, through her hands, through other parts of her body. Then she doesn't need to perform ghusl and you're still satisfied. Vice versa applies too. Let's say you as the man didn't want to perform ghusl or whatever, and she wanted intimacy, then you could stimulate her as long as you don't penetrate, and only the spouse, only she as the wife would need to perform ghusl if she ejaculated or reached orgasm. I hope that makes sense. I've already mentioned that I'm not an Islamic scholar. I have just done my own Islamic research on this. So just to reiterate, basically the workaround to this, to your issue, is to enjoy non-penetrative forms of sexual intimacy. Your wife can stimulate you without you penetrating her, and if you orgasm as a man, you perform ghusl. If she doesn't orgasm or doesn't ejaculate and doesn't release sexual fluid, if she doesn't release sexual fluid, she does not need to perform ghusl. And it's perfectly fine if some of your sexual fluid goes on her body, like, you know, if it goes on her hand, for example, she doesn't need to perform ghusl, okay? Ghusl is only required if penetration happens, regardless of if there is ejaculation or not. If penetration happens, both spouses perform ghusl. If only one spouse ejaculates without penetration involved, or only one spouse reaches orgasm or climax, that is the spouse who performed ghusl. If the other spouse didn't ejaculate, didn't reach orgasm, as long as there's no penetration, that is the spouse that does not need to perform ghusl. So get your wife to stimulate you in non-penetrative ways. You can stimulate your organ, your sexual organ as a man, on other parts of her body without going into her, without entering her. She can use her hands. You get what I'm kind of saying, that there are other ways for her to stimulate you without penetration. I hope that this video was helpful for you, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.